Hey, it's Herman from Buzz Machine here, and I want to talk to you about our give you an update actually on our EOS R5. It has been now going on just over 2 months with the R5, about 2.5 months, and we're just very impressed. I've picked up this camera, and one of the persons that I work with, a friend of mine who works with me at work. In my day job fairly frequently and is actually really using the video and photo features right now more than I am. Um, both picked this up on the first day they were available at the local camera shop. And for myself, I've been shooting sometimes 2 to 3 events a day, public events. And these are typically indoors or outdoors. Of course, with COVID-19, you got to be a little bit more careful, but they are events that are that require materials that could be published or obviously always shared online as well. And so it's been amazing over that period. And I've also been working on a couple of video projects. And right off, I'll say this. I've not had any overheating issues at all, photo or video. My friend has had a few, not I wouldn't say issues. It's come up, but it has been since the firmware upgrade has been perfect, or the firmware update has been working very well, and it still fits within the workflow of a very video intensive workflow, I should say, and that's been working quite well on my end for the type of video work I do. It's been working fine. I do a lot of interviews, sit down stuff, a lot of situational like corporate videos. When there's whether there's a lot of B-roll or a little bit, it's fit both roles, and so that's been very impressive. On out on shooting high frame rates, using the 20 frames per second, the silent shutter. I've been shooting 1500 to 2000, 2500 exposures at an event, sometimes 2, 3 times a day, and never had an overheating problem. And the battery's been, these Canon batteries, it's great to be able to use my older batteries if I need to, but I've shot these events, 1500, 2000 exposures, high frame rate with one battery. I've shot back-to-back events with the same battery. So, photographically speaking, these batteries last and they just go, which is great. It's made my entire workflow easier, and that is something you cannot understate. That's the key. When you're running a business, when you're working professionally, your workflow is everything. It's so important. And, to be able to have that camera on for 2 hours, shooting high frame rate stuff or high frames per second, multiple mega exposures, 2000, 2500 exposures, and to not have any issues is spectacular. To know that this camera's built like a tank, with the weather sealing and everything, and the way it integrates with the weather sealed L lenses is just another thing. And that really, it gives you that confidence when you're working, and that's really important to have that confidence, that you're not going to have problems with the camera, you're not going to have problems with the gear that you're using. That's sort of, I think, utmost for me. I've always been about quality things and reliability, and to have that reliability is important, and we'll get to that later. It's even made my editing easier, and I'll explain that later as well. The sharpness, the detail in the images, the low light, and what I can recover from from the shadows is amazing in photos. I've done stuff underground in practical bunker situations and different facilities, public facilities and whatnot. And what it can pull is incredible. It's that detail that you want with the large sensor. And this camera loves the rain. I've had it starts raining here in September and doesn't stop till March. So we're on the wet coast, and so you get a lot of rain. And to be able to shoot and shoot in a way that you're comfortable with out in the open. I'm not sitting here sheltering under umbrellas or in alcoves and doorways trying to get shots, with whether I'm out on the street or doing a public event. While other photographers might be under an awning somewhere, I'm out in the middle of it, shooting with that camera. Even with the R here that I'm doing this video on, I will do that, and the 5 series, the 5D that I have back there. But the point is that that's what inspires confidence and allows you to create. If you're not being inspired, if you can't be confident in your gear, if you're worried about it getting wet or dropping it or what have you, then it's not professional gear. And, I don't abuse my cameras. I do baby them, but in the back of my mind, there's always that what if. And if you have gear that does not fail you, you're gonna be satisfied, and you're gonna be confident to be able to go out and create. And this camera loves the rain. There's just no other way to put it. My Canon cameras, my professional bodies, have always loved the rain, and that's one of the features that I've found outstanding. The video from the R5 is the best video I have ever seen in a camera of this type, in this range. And that's very important. I mean, I work with C100s and C200s at work, and have a Lumix, work with the G85 and the GH5. And what you get in the 4K HQ is incredible. And so, and we'll get into that a little bit as well here with some of the details, but let's start with the weather sealing. It's a weather sealed camera that handles the heat. I've had this, in a humid summer day at an event over 30 degrees Celsius, which is hot, especially with the summer mugginess, sitting outdoors and shooting for a good 2 to 3 hours in my style, shooting some B-roll, shooting some video directly, conversational stuff. No problem with overheating, not even an overheating message on there. It's the way you work it, and my workflow obviously works with this, but that was the thing. And it's really important. Now it's fall, it's raining, and I'm shooting outdoors at events without a worry. I'm doing street stuff with confidence, not worrying about, oh, what if that awning dumps on me and I get soaked? No, I'm not worried about it. So that's really important. With the work stuff, when I'm at an event, I'm doing 2 or 3 events back to back in a day, and I need to send my photos in so they can set them up on the social media account, or to wherever they're going to post them to, news releases or what have you. I can send in my JPEGs, and with other cameras, I wouldn't do that. I've realized that I would spend time editing photos in post and then send them in. Whereas with a Canon, and particularly the R5, the colors out of camera are perfect. They're gorgeous. They don't need any adjustment. If you get your white balance right, and the auto white balance is amazing on these cameras, indoors or out. But if you have your white balance down, your out of camera JPEGs are going to be perfect. And the detail in those JPEGs, I've shot these off to different, to the people that require them to put them on the social media teams and what have you. And I'm like, do you want me to send the raw files so you can edit them? How do those JPEGs look? And initially I was doing that. I was spending time editing, and, these are large files, so they take a bit to edit. And there's not a lot of software out there that can do the R5 files at this point, the raw files. But I started sending JPEGs, so they could use them instantly on social accounts, on Instagram and that kind of thing. And and they're like, yeah, just send us the JPEGs. They're great. And then I checked it out, and you go on a Flickr album, and you can do the 200 times enlargement, and they're still sharp as a tack. And that is critical, because in the kind of work I do, whether it's with small businesses or in my day job, having the ability to send JPEGs at the event, at an event live, just go on my phone and instantly I've got my photos there and pick out a few and send them out, maybe crop them a little bit, that kind of thing. But that saves a ton of time and gets that news out faster. And that's important for me. So that's a really big benefit of this camera. And if you're a news shooter, if you're somebody that's working with a small media organization, or you just have, stuff that you need on a schedule and you need it on time, you can do that with this camera. You can do that with this camera with confidence. And, the people, for example, one of the people that typically would edit my photos is a Fuji shooter. He shoots a lot of Fuji Pro gear. And he was very impressed with the files sent over. So I'm very happy with that. The silent digital shutter, that is incredible. When you're at a public event and there's speeches or what have you, to be able to capture those silently, especially right now with COVID-19, you don't have a large crowd. You have 2 or 3 people on a podium, and people are, it's whisper quiet in there besides a speaker. And if you come in there with this loud shutter, ka-chung, 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 you are going to distract. And so this camera, with the silent shutter at 20 frames a second, has been a godsend. I mean, this is incredible. This is one of the features I really love. And I've had a silent shutter with some of the other cameras I have, the Fuji and whatnot, and a Nikon. Didn't have it on the EOS R. It wasn't a super loud shutter, but the ability to be completely silent and still have all access to all your features is unprecedented. At 20 frames a second silent digital shutter, it's amazing. It's amazing. And so that has been a feature that's been a killer feature. And then just the overall ease of use. I'm a Canon shooter. I have been shooting Canon since the 1970s, since my dad gave me his Canon FX from 1967, and I still have it. He's using a point and shoot now. But I've been shooting Canon, so I'm familiar with the bodies from the 5Ds and the 5D Mark II that I still have, and the EOS R. There's so much familiarity, including the way the menus work. But the menus on the R5 here are menus that a beginner could use. A photography beginner could jump into these menus and figure out how to use this camera. You don't have to dig multiple layers. You've got a touch screen that works on every single aspect of this touch screen. Every area is touch that works with that to give you control, including the shutter, which is just I have it up in this corner here. Not the shutter, but the autofocus, and I can move it around. This is what I use. I don't use the joystick. I never used it. But having that touch shutter is just so convenient. It's just quickly, back and forth in this upper right-hand corner, and I can focus anywhere with this camera. And that's been brilliant as well. And I mean, I'm not saying just because it's a $6,000 camera in Canada, it's, the reason. I mean, I shoot with this little guy a lot too. This is the M50. I love this camera. This is a camera that I throw in my golf bag, throw it in the glove box of my car when I have to go somewhere with family, go to the beach. And it's a great little camera to carry around. And you can get beautiful photos with it. But to be able to just jump in there, hand the camera to my kid, and she's learning on the M50, but 9 years old, and be able to look at it and go, oh, this, and this. That is great. I mean, there's a lot of depth in those menus, but I've had to shoot with Sonys, and I mean, next to Canon, I would say Panasonic's. The Lumix menus are probably the best, and I use Lumix cameras heavily. I have a Fuji up there, the X100F, which is a great camera to run around with. But the Canon menus are just unprecedented. There's nothing like it. They're a photography company first. They've always been a photography company, and they know what photographers need. And they also started the videographer revolution with their with the 5D Mark II and the 7D early on, and so they have a lot going for them in that area as well. And we'll talk about video later, but I want to talk about glass. The RF35 that I'm shooting this on is my favorite lens of the RF lenses because it's small, and I'm hoping for them to bring out some more primes. It's not weather sealed, although I've had it in a little bit of wet and it hasn't hasn't given me any problems. But it shoots macro, and so it's one of my favorite. At f1.8, it's one of my favorite product photography lenses. I'm either shooting with a 2470 or the RF, the 35 1.8. I do use other lenses as well. I'll use a 50 1.4 sometimes, or an 85 1.8, 70 to 200 f2.8 if I need it. But the RF 35 is my go-to because of not just the size, but how sharp it is and what it can do in the macro sphere, which is really important. And then the EF glass. I mean, the R system allows you to utilize EF glass as if it's native. So it's not like this EF glass is adapted. So when people talk about an adapter, that's not what these Canon EF to RF to EF adapters are. It's not like adapting a Canon lens to a Sony camera, which a lot of people do, and trying to adapt all that ubiquitous Canon glass that's out there to their Sony or other cameras or their Lumixes. This is a true perfect integration. So to be able to do that with an adapter is very, very important. And it's basically, it's native. So you're using EF lenses. I have a whole shelf of lenses back there. They are native lenses for all intents and purposes. The RF lenses give you a few more features, but they're features you never had with the EF lenses to start with. So when you step up to an RF lens, the RF 35 or one of the other ones, the 50, the 2870, you get a lot more, but it wasn't like you had that in the whole universe of the EF lenses or any other manufacturer's lenses. And that's the other thing with the lenses. The glass is unprecedented in the camera world, and that's what people rave about. And that's what a lot of people are picking up the R5 for. A lot of times it's not just the amazing camera, but the glass as well. And then to talk about video, because YouTube is full of videographers, there's been a lot of those people out there talking about it, some film people as well. If you're a film shooter, you're shooting with a C200, C300, or Red, or, an RE. You're not shooting with an R5 as your primary camera. However, you can use it as a primary camera in conjunction with other cameras. And I shoot video with the R5 and the R, and it's been working just fine. I take advantage of the crop on the R to be able to shoot 4K, and it make my lenses work completely differently because of that crop factor, which is great. I can do the same thing on the RF, or I can use them straight out full frame. But the video matches perfectly with anything I would do on a C200 or C300. So that is magical in itself, and that's very valuable. And if you're doing film and if you're doing commercials and that type of thing, that's really good to know. So the camera allows you that. The high quality 4K is unmatched. I mean, people don't talk about that. They may talk about a limitation on the amount of time you can shoot, which is a lot more of the firmware upgrade. But to be able to do that, and it looks better than anything you can get out of a Sony or a Panasonic camera, that speaks volumes. That 8K that's downscaled is amazing. And if you do down to 4K, and if you do 8K, if you're shooting something like a landscape or something, and some B-roll of a city or something like that, and you do that in 8K, there's nothing that comes close. If you're shooting an interview, shoot it in 4K 24, or shoot it in 4K 24 non-HQ. Shoot it in or shoot it in the crop mode. You're never going to have problems with them overheating. Output it to an external. If you're doing something long, output it to a Ninja. There are a lot of options out there, and you can fit it in my workflow. For example, I can use this camera, these two cameras interchangeably, the R and the R5, and between the two cameras, I'm able to shoot for as long as I want. and I can alternate cameras. I can change because I'm not ever shooting in one spot with one camera for an extended length of time. And if it is, it's a conversational thing. It's not at high frame rate. It's not in, it's not a slow motion shot. It's not a B-roll shot. It's me interviewing somebody. I don't need that shot in 4K 120, for example, or an 8K for that matter. So it's, I mean, the editing still takes a long time. And so there's different ways that we can get around the editing limitations until the software that we use starts actually being, more friendly to these files. And of course, there's another firmware update coming with different forms of 8K raw or 8K footage as well, and I think some different 1080 as well. Can't wait for the 1080 120 as well, because that's supposed to be coming in the next firmware upgrade, I believe. And when that update comes out, a lot of the slow motion B-roll that I'd shoot would be in 1080 120, because a lot of the stuff that I do for production is 1080. It's just, that's what people are asking for, is full HD, but not 4K. I do shoot 4K a lot more now because of this camera, because I've got more flexibility with my lenses compared to the R. But it's still delivered in 1080, and it's still delivered for YouTube in most of my cases, or, for their clients, for their websites, wherever it may be hosted. Where do we go from here? So it's been 2.5 months, and, for me, this camera is not only worth every penny, it's going to make me more than a penny every year, just like my 5D Mark II did. And I still take it to shoots. It's still a backup camera. It's still there for me. It's been over 10 years. So the value of that over 10 years is incredible. This R5 over 7 or 8 years is going to be incredible value. It's worth every penny. And after basically 2.5 months with this camera, what is it? It's about the 8th of October. And so it's been basically 2.5 months since we've had it. This camera is beyond expectations. It's blown me away. And I think we're going to find a lot more people finding that out over a period of time. It's something, it's not about being a fanboy. I mean, I like I said, I have all sorts of cameras. I have Fuji up there. It's one of my favorites. But it's about ease of use and what is practical. If I'm just going to run out, to do some stuff in the afternoon, I might grab this X100F. It's a great little camera. Give you a little, I mean, it's a beautiful camera, beautiful to look at. The M50 to go out to the golf course. This is bits of gear that I love to use. I take the R5 with me everywhere now, actually, even with the 24-70 lens on it. It's not overly large. It's actually a fairly decent sized, decent option actually for a camera. But the bottom line is, you use what works for your workflow, use what allows you to create. And with the R5 in my hands, what it has allowed me to do is to create without any sort of hassle. It's basically allowed me to just go and make video, go and create photos. And for me, that's been a boon. That's been something that you don't get with just any, camera system that easily. I mean, there's always something. It doesn't matter what system you use. There's always going to be something that isn't quite there, isn't perfect. Whether it's the autofocus isn't there, whether it's, the stabilization isn't there. I mean, we didn't even talk about the stabilization of this thing. And part of that is because I use it like without even feeling it's there or having to deal with it. It's been incredible, whether it's shooting handheld video at the last event I was at, to shooting photos handheld at, 1/20th, 1/30th of a second. You can do that, and you can do that and get perfectly sharp images. And that is just, that's something that you can't you can't, I guess, you can't put a finger on that as far as a value. What is that? What is a value then? Did a video a while back talking about value. That's where the proposition of that value. If I bought some other camera and then I traded it in after 2 years, and another one after 2 years, another one after every 2 years, or sooner, because some manufacturers just put them out like that, and they, that those cameras are upgraded every year, and I'd be out more than what I spent on this. And the bottom line is, I'm going to get more value out of this. It fits my workflow, and it allows me to go out and create. And that's the key. I mean, whether it's this M50 or whether it's the R5, I mean, they both are just going to let me go out and create. And that, to me, means the world. That's the most important thing. And so I'll leave you with that thought. But if you have any comments, please leave them down below. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you think about the R5 if you have it. If you have any questions about the R5, I can look it up. I can tell you what it's like real world if there's something in specific that you'd like to know. I've been shooting with this for pretty much 2.5 months now. And between the two of us, friend and I, we've been shooting tons of video and photo. So if you have questions, let us know in the comments below. Give us a like, and be sure to subscribe. Hit the subscribe button so you get the reminder for the next video. And we'll catch you on the next one.